So, hi everyone. My name is David Del Ser. I'm part of the secretariat at CIFAR with Nelly, and I'm tasked with providing some quick opening words to this amazing panel. All I wanted to say roughly is that at CIFAR, the CIFAR Alliance, we believe in exponential action because otherwise we're just not going to get ahead of the damage caused by climate change, which is itself exponential, right? So as we're looking for ways to create this exponential action, this exponential improving action, we look for enablers that can make that happen. And Web3, in my view, and I hope the view of the panel, is one such exponential enabler. And that's why a few months ago at the CIFAR Alliance, we formed a working group to explore how Web3 is being used or could be used for climate action, right? And that there's been a report that has been produced by that working group that we're sort of publishing now, which I definitely recommend everybody to go check out. But in general, at the CIFAR Alliance, just to give you the sense of how it affects us, the CIFAR Alliance will want to accelerate 3 levels of work. Hi, Jesse. One is our own expertise. The second is the bottom-up innovators that are in the trench lines confronting climate change. And the third level is sort of top-down partnerships across members of the CIFAR Alliance that together we can achieve things we probably couldn't alone, right? And I think this working group, this report highlights how we're working along those 3 levels, right? Because it's definitely made all of us, the CIFAR Alliance, smarter about how Web3 can be an enabler. So that's accelerating our own expertise. It's a report that we're using with some of the innovators we're supporting, say the TECA Fellows, for example, the TECA Founders, and we're also using Web3 at the core of some of the joint partnerships that we're exploring, like the Universal Climate Insurance concept that I'm happy to talk about at a later point. So I'm really looking forward to this panel, to sharing these ideas and this excitement with everybody. I do hope we move beyond the important topic of debate on whether Web3 creates more emissions than is worth it or not. That's important, but there's also all the upside. So let's focus on how we can create impact, positive impact, and how we can benefit communities and the planet. So with that, thanks so much for coming over. Thanks a lot, Nelly, for spearheading that working group with Jackson and publishing that report, and now moderating the panel. So I'll get out of your way now. Thanks so much.
Thank you, David, and welcome everyone to this to our panel on blockchain for climate resilience in emerging markets. We're really happy to have our 2 panelists today, Gabriela Chang and Jayed Momand. As David mentioned, we've prepared a report on the blockchain for climate innovation, trying to understand what was out there and what were some of the use cases for blockchain. So before I introduce the panelists and start this conversation, I just want to share a little bit about what we found to provide some context of why we started this journey and why we started exploring the potential of blockchain technology for climate innovation in emerging markets. We are truly inspired by what we found, and we try to put something together that was illustrative and instructive, going from the basics to maybe more complex concepts of how this technology can be leveraged for climate action. It also tries to explain the complexity of the ecosystem, because there's different type of actors. You have the investors, but you also have what we've called the ecosystem enablers. So many organizations out there, like Open Earth Foundation, RefiDAO, and others, who are trying to make sense of the space, trying to enable collaboration within this space. We also analyzed the different myriad of applications that blockchain technology can have in the climate sector, particularly within emerging markets. And we found different initiatives that are using blockchain to promote sustainability and address climate change. One of them is Ethic Hub, whose co-founder and CSO is here with us, and she will tell us a little bit about their experience, which is one of the initiatives that we profiled on the report. We also found compelling use cases on carbon finance, on land restoration, and ocean conservation, on financial inclusion, on climate investment, climate insurance, and agriculture. Of course, based on our analysis, 41.2% of the initiatives that we identified were within the carbon finance space, which is a lot of what we hear out there. However, in the report, we tried to shed light on other uses that the blockchain technology is also having. Towards the end, we also acknowledge some of the barriers that the entrepreneurs, the investors, the enablers, and different consultations that we had over the past 5 months told us about, like the lack of financing, navigating the regulatory landscape in different countries, the difficulty of developing new countries, like facing specific government or private sector policies and collaborations. Have played, however, a great role, a crucial role for many of these initiatives to have a successful implementation. So when we ask them, so what has been the most important factor for your success or for to go from MVP to growth, and they've mentioned government and private sector policies collaboration as a crucial aspect for that. We conclude with a call to action to invest in blockchain literacy, which is still one major barrier, enhance user experience, try to improve the regulatory barriers in many countries, and also the gender gap that we also acknowledge in the report. Women are underrepresented as clients, as leaders, and this is also why it is particularly special to present Gabriela, which I am going to do now, and in this space. She's a Web3 entrepreneur, and she's CSO and co-founder of Ethic Hub. And our second panelist today is Jad Momand. He's also an entrepreneur, and he's co-founder and general partner of Cerulean Ventures. They're both pioneers in the space. Back way like 5 years ago, that in blockchain time is a long time. So very happy that you guys are here. I want to start with Gabriela, the innovator in the room, to talk to us a little bit about Ethic Hub. I understand it's a blockchain-based initiative that focuses on connecting small farmers in developing countries with international lenders. And the question here is, how does this contribute to climate resilience?
Thank you, Nelly. First, I would like to tell how Ethic Hub started, because the world is disconnected. The whole system, the whole economical and social and everything system has a set of rules that exclude 1/4 of the world population. According to the World Bank, it's 2 billion people excluded. And the important data here is that 70% of them are smallholder farmers excluded from the financial system. And these agricultures produce 1/3 of the world's food in some of the greenest and most vulnerable ecosystems of the planet. So their well-being is ours. So we started by building a protocol to solve the financial exclusion. So we created, to say in simple words, a tokenized crowd collateral, a Web3-based blended finance to secure the loans for these farmers, because it's the lack of knowledge that generates distrust on this segment, because the global benchmark of default is only 3%. The people doesn't know. They relate to the default rate on microfinancial that goes to rural areas, not to agricultural areas. They are excluded from microfinance because they cannot pay every week or every month. So we started there because we are kind of a bridge people. We live between Latin America and Europe, and we know the difference, and we've been lucky enough as to be involved into the problems. I used to work with the Secretary of Economic Development in Chiapas, in Mexico, in this coffee area, and it was focused on agriculture. And I was an organic coffee producer. So my neighbors were these smallholders that I know. And I was lucky enough as to gather people in my team that were pioneers using blockchain, trying to develop a crowd lending platform on Bitcoin back in 2013. So that's the kind of people I have on board. And soon we realized that the problem of exclusion was because they don't fit within the system, because they don't have data, because they don't have internet to have data, and because their collateral is very little to be considered as a valid one. So that's why we developed this one. And then we realized they are excluded also from the carbon credits markets and from the traditional certifications because they are too small. But yet, if you put them together, it's a huge mass. But our system has not considered the volume of this. So climate change is key. It's related to agriculture because these smallholder farmers cannot afford to do intensive agriculture, to use chemicals. In the case of coffee, 80% of the global production of coffee is in the hands of poor people. And coffee is king of agroforestry. That's why there are so many programs focused on solving this, in addressing this problem, because of the consequences are in impact is environmental, social, and economical all together. That's why they used to start over there. So if we find a way to benefit these farmers for holding this kind of agriculture, they will be a force of change to have resilience against this climate change. And it's very important to understand that and to have a global vision of the economy, because maybe we feel safe in Europe, but we are all connected. This is the same planet. So it's very important to address these tiny but plentiful problems. And I think blockchain is the key for this, not only because of the organizational structure it offers with the blockchain, but from my point of view, because of the ability to create incentives, programmable incentives, this is tokens, to promote the behaviors that we need to be done. We need to bring the brightest mind to solve the biggest problems of the world. And this can be achieved through this technology. So that's why we are betting all on this. And we are very happy to have contributors. They said Web2, internet, traditional world, is about competitors, while Web3, it's about collaborators. So we are very proud of the collaboration we have. Now we have Heifer International joining us, and we're very happy to share this news, because they were already addressing the smallholder farmers, but now through the technology, their scope of impact will be wider. And so I invite all of you to learn more about how blockchain can be used for very positive things for the humanity.
Thank you, Gabriela, and thank you for sharing those news. If anyone has questions for our panelists, please put them on the chat. We'll have some space for Q&A towards the end. And Jad, thank you again for being here. You guys have also been, in the space for a while, and you particularly as well. And I wonder, of course, and we found that although there is some investment out there for Web3 and blockchain power projects, very few are investing in the climate and those focused on climate action. So you guys are double pioneers in that sense, because you are betting on that change and on the possibility of blockchain being an enabler for scale. And my question for you would be, how do you guys evaluate those projects that claim to contribute to climate resilience, and what are the key indicators that you look for? In our research, when we asked the entrepreneurs, how are you measuring impact? 57% said they did. Although there isn't a clarity on what type of impact measurement they're using, it's very right now there are several frameworks that are out there and there isn't consensus. But I'm wondering, on your perspective from Cerulean Ventures, how do you assess that impact?
Yeah, definitely a great question. So we are not an impact fund, but we do measure it actually. So like we don't have there's nothing on the front page that's necessarily like we're an impact fund, but the problem with both of us is that we want to make sure we actually do have that somewhere, right? Is that I say problem in a joking fashion, of course, because the thing is, I think we kind of have an unfair advantage in that in working with blockchains, a lot of this climate and nature problem that we have is an accounting problem, partly. It's very complex, but one of the main problems is accounting, right? Like accounting for nature, accounting for carbon, accounting for biodiversity. And there are a lot of entangled things in this, right? There's accounting for carbon, to speak to your earlier comment, this is probably why a lot of folks in the space focus on carbon, because it's almost the easiest thing to account for, right? It's like how much did we pull into the system to produce a pair of jeans? Do we even know that number? Oh, some people know the number. Let's look at our own system, right? Like if you're in the apparel impact space, or if you're in the, steel or concrete or anything like that, that's really carbon intensive. It's going to be something that you're going to measure or already are. So for us, when we look at the new ventures, it's important also to say, like, we're not, we do make non-blockchain investments as well. And it's all for us, it's all about accounting, right? And so blockchains are important because they can actually be open accounting systems, right? And that's why we think they're very interesting. And so that's why we invested in the space the way we have, right? And so going back to your original question, once we kind of get the accounting perspective down, when we look at impact, that's kind of what we're looking at, right? Because if we're investing in these systems for accounting, then we want to be able to turn back to a portfolio company and say, hey, you built X system on a blockchain. Can you tell us, what are the transactions? What's the proof, right? And I think it all depends on the sector, right? So like, luckily Gabriela's here. I can actually just point to her and be like, hey, EthicHub, we invest in EthicHub, right? So we very much like what they're doing. And so EthicHub is a great example, because if you want to point at the impact at the end of the day, you can say, oh, well, what was the impact? Well, how many loans did you finance, right? Which is actually just how much new money have you originated in a lot of ways, right? Because this is not a loan that would have been originated in any other way, given the systems at play, right? Given the people on the ground, given the legal structures, given all the various impediments for farmers across Chiapas and other jurisdictions that EthicHub is working in, that's a pretty easy question. And say, well, how impactful was this? Well, we originated this many new loans. Great. How many defaulted? How much of that got into the hands of people at the end of the day? For EthicHub, them being built on a blockchain with a wallet, at the end of the accounting stops at the wallet, of course, but you can at least say it went to this wallet and it was used this way, right? And so that, I think, is a pretty powerful way to say, like, what was the impact of all those dollars? What did they do? Well, they brought this much coffee to market. And you can kind of intuit that, because then the other question becomes, what's the default rate, right? So if your default rate is extremely high, then maybe that money wasn't used for bringing coffee to market and for growing wealth amongst farmers, right? So this is a nice toy example, because you can just point to it and say, well, why did you guys make that investment decision? Well, here's the way we measured impact for it, right? Now, that question gets a little bit more interesting when you look at things like, if you're looking at the climate resilience bucket and you want to talk about the resilience of an ecosystem with respect to biodiversity or soil carbon or something like that, where the methodologies are, either still in development or not as reliable, right? Because we're talking about biology here, right? Like there is you can stop me or I can ramble about this stuff forever, by the way. So just tell me if I'm going on too long.
You still have a few minutes.
Excellent. So I was listening to a podcast this morning where Microsoft's chief sustainability officer, who now is a fund manager, was talking about his outlook for the next 30 years, right? Like, what are the things that he's optimistic about? What are the things that just make him go like, oh shit, oh my goodness, that's a lot, right? Like, so he was kind of going down this almost in a hierarchy of things that he thinks are pretty simple and solvable. And so he's talking about like energy. That one is actually pretty straightforward. It's physics, fine. Just going down the stack, carbon, fine. Organic chemistry, totally fine. We'll figure it out. Biology, very difficult. Like very difficult to measure, hard to account for, unknown what we kind of do to it. Really tough. Ecology, impossible. Right? Like this is a guy who did his PhD in ecology and then did computational ecology at Microsoft before becoming the chief sustainability officer, right? So I think all I'm saying is that this points back to the question of impact and impact measurement, and it really depends on what you're looking at, and it just gets really, really hard the more complex it is, right? So if you zoom back out and you look at the sectors we invest in, if you're doing carbon, we think carbon is, as this asset class sort of has been around for about 20 years, depending on who you ask, right? And so if it's compliance markets, right? Carbon impact at the end of the day, we think is somewhat straightforward, depending on the methodology, right? So if there are any voluntary carbon market listeners out there, they'll contend with this, of course. But at the end of the day, we're looking at, and I think we even mentioned this in the report maybe, but what we're looking for is not just to use blockchain as a technology to bring existing credits on chain. That's not very exciting to us, right? What is exciting is to combine blockchain with existing technologies that are used to turn nature into assets. So say frontier technology for monitoring, for real world asset tokenization, for stuff like that, that then enables you to make a claim that you have a net new carbon origination, right? That we think is very interesting as an impact metric, because it means that it's kind of in the vein of additionality, sort of. It's not exactly additionality, but it's more like we're bringing new carbon to market with new projects that wouldn't have gone through the normal channels of Verra, Gold Standard, or the global compliance markets, right? That we think is exciting because we can say, hey, it's new activity, it's new economic and ecological activity that we have incentivized with the fund, right? That's great. That's a great impact metric for us. And then on the other side, we really want to see from our portfolio companies, we want to see net new demand, right, for eco credits, not just carbon, right? Because why net new demand? Because these nature markets have a very path dependent way that we've gotten here. You know, we've gotten here through greenwashing and, you know, some fraud, and a lot of that was not intentional, actually, right? It's actually just going back to my Microsoft Chief Sustainability Officer's comment. Some of these things in ecology are damn near impossible, right, to actually deconvolute and make sense of. So naturally, it's going to lend itself to things that feel or look like fraud, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's why we really want to be sure that there's net new demand for eco credits, that there are new purchasers, there's new money coming into the market, so that we can actually say it's not just another thing that someone tokenized from Verra's registry or from Gold Standard's registry and put on chain. It's net new activity, right? And so like for us, those impact metrics are really essential because it tells us that there are new markets, net new economic activity being devoted to conservation projects, to preservation, to making these things help us pay for the economy, essentially. It's another way that's actually one way that we refer to it internally, is that we think about it as like, how do we make the economy pay its full price, right? Because like when you actually think about what is and isn't an externality and the impacts of plastics and carbon and all these things, we kind of, the current economic structures we are operate under just kind of say, oh, someone else's problem, right? It's a public good problem. It's no one's problem, right? And so that's why we want to kind of close that loop with the fund. And these are some of the metrics we look at. You know, if we're looking at a blockchain project, number one, is it accounting for something effectively? And number two, is it generating that new activity? Or is it just taking stuff from the existing economic system and throwing it in somewhere where it can be speculated on?
Thank you, Jed. And yes, you pretty much until how complex this space is, and how familiar we need to get with the terminology. For example, for net new activity, what we mean for that, what we actually mean as something successful or impactful. And going back to Gabriela and Ethic Hub, you guys are pioneers in the space. So you've navigated through many of these different type of impact measurements and different ways of assessing impact and understanding where you add value the most. What kind of obstacles within this context? What kind of obstacles have you encountered in you know, as you launched and tried to scale Ethic Hub? I understand you guys are in different countries, working with different type of audiences. What kind of obstacles as this innovator have you encountered, particularly in emerging markets?
The main obstacle we found is not in emerging markets, it's on the other side. I mean, we are connecting something that makes us sound like a menu for vegans and carnivores, you know? When you want to put together, we were the first to put together real world with blockchain. I mean, not financial derivatives, no algorithmic things, but real life. That Web3 didn't like it. And if you talk about poor farmers, they don't believe poor farmers are able to pay 8%. They don't know they are paying over 100% interest for the life they have, okay? And if you go to the other side, to the impact space, they are super traditional, conservative, and even when they want to innovate, Web3 and cryptocurrencies are too new, too risky, There's a lot to learn yet. There's a long way to go. And put that together, that's a challenge. But I think it's also where the opportunity is. And I'm so happy that we made it ahead, because Cerulean Ventures is one of these. He says he's not impact, but when I talk about our investors, I always highlight that something that was an oxymoron some months ago, some years ago, impact and crypto, these guys have fused it, had made it. So I'm very proud to count on them. And I'm very proud to be able to say to the people that doesn't know anything about Web3, we have impact Web3 investors and funds. That's something. And I think that's the main challenge. When you do something absolutely new, people need, to compare. But like what? But if nobody did something similar, it's very difficult to give examples. And imagine what it was to have in 2018, to have 40 minutes to talk with a VC and to explain Ethic Hub. Do I explain him first blockchain? Can I explain blockchain in 10 minutes and then use the other time to explain my business model? They said, also Jeff Bezos, when he was pitching about his company, people would ask him more about internet than about the business model that it was Amazon. No? So it's something similar. I think we are the spearhead. Yeah. So it's a lonely place at the beginning, but I'm very happy to see how it's evolving very, very fast. Now for us, having this collaboration with Hafer International means a lot, because they are a very traditional NGO, and it will set a precedent, because then other very traditional, powerful development entities will say, well, they did it, then maybe we can try. I love to highlight that people think all the Web3 ecosystem, and there's a lot of money coming out of nowhere, whatever. If you put together all the money from the Web3, all the Bitcoins that there are, it's nothing compared with the development funds available. So for me, the challenge is not to start from zero, it's to connect Web2 with Web3 and make this transition to be productive, because the funding is there, the intention is there, but they lack the tools. So far, we have, I don't know how many years working with impact investment, and the base of the pyramid remains unattended. There's been a lot of work done, of course, but it doesn't go beyond that, because the system itself, the structure, the infrastructure of our system it doesn't enable. So we need this new technology to try new solutions. As always is said, if you want different results, don't keep trying the same. So that would be my answer.
Thank you, Gabriela. And just before I let you go, I have like a follow-up question to that, in terms of what do you think are the opportunities for those connections, for that collaboration? So as you've seen this space evolve, and as you say, okay, now I don't have to spend that much time explaining to my potential investors what blockchain is. There is more and more use cases, and there's more adoption in the space. A lot of challenges in terms of interoperability, like if you're working with one layer, then you can't work, it doesn't always connect to another one, and some of these technologies are not talking to each other. But what are those collaborative opportunities between industries and sectors, thinking this Web2, Web3 comment that you just had, do you see in the space that have the potential to connect?
I see a lot of potential. As I was saying before, Web2, it's about competitors, while Web3, it's about collaborators. And the blockchain itself, it's a mechanism that enables coordination, that if you set the rules for the game and you agree on them and you embed them in the blockchain, everybody will comply with that, So I think this is a tool. But it's a tool, again. What we use it for, it depends on us. So we need to make the effort to use technology always on the benefit of humanity. So otherwise, it's just another tool. And in this way, I think it's opening a space for the development entities, for the people who is working on field as us with the technology and with the whole ecosystem. Something that I love about the blockchain space is its composability. I don't need to develop everything. I can just plug the other blocks that are being built. And as you say, this interoperability, I just have a talk in the morning with someone talking about the solutions against this lack of interoperativity. Yeah, so it is evolving very fast. So I think the challenge is to coordinate all these efforts to do something real, because we can't keep playing with financial derivatives and algorithms and made another speculative casino. As I say, you can put steroids on Wall Street, but it's not the point. To do the same as Jahed was saying, to do this faster and better, it's not about it. You can do absolutely different things. Imagine if we would think that internet was just to save the envelopes and the stamps, to make mailing faster and more efficient. And you've left behind all the e-commerce. I mean, I don't have to even to explain it, no? Google Maps, the social media, all that we already have. That's the same with blockchain. We are just starting. This is just the peak of the iceberg, and there's a lot to be done. So let's coordinate our efforts for this to be a coordinated evolution of humanity. We have the chance to do this. We're in that tilting point that we can jump and solve the big problems we have if we coordinate as humans, if we put as the value, the ethics, to think ethically, what's good for the planet is good for the human beings. And once we coordinate, we can do lots of things together. They said, alone you go faster, but together you go further. So I think we have to go further together.
Thank you, Gabriela. And on that note, Jahed, I'm going to put you on the spot. Could you share when we assess the space, and I think I had talked to you about this before, many of the initiatives we found are in an MVP phase. They're struggling to scale. They're struggling to find their product fit, their market fit, and although there are very successful cases, some of which we profile in the report, but still, like overall, like in the bigger scenario, they're still in the initial phase, we could say, no. And however, I think there is reason to be an optimist, as Gabriela was mentioning, and I'm wondering, from your perspective in Cerulean Ventures, what are those projects that inspire you? What are those successful investments or successful ventures that you see out there that are reason for optimism?
Well, I think there are at least 3 that come to mind. So cut me off if I keep going here, but I'm not gonna throw any more credit to Ethica. I could talk about them forever. We talked about them quite a bit. They're obviously in that class. There's a couple that I'm really bullish about. So one of them is Earthbank, another one of our investments. So Earthbank, what's interesting, right, is that what they have in common with Ethica, and where I think a lot of the other protocols and groups that are out there building, what they're having trouble with is that they aren't really thinking through the interaction with people in the real world and what problem this thing actually solves for them, right? It's and so Earthbank and Ethicub, I think, share this. And Earthbank is basically building a kind of a full stack tokenization platform for nature-based solutions. And what I mean by full stack is that they want to do last mile payments for the landowners and stewards of nature who are actually participating in the projects. They have an MRV solution that works on monitoring the asset and issuing credits based on particular and in a continuous way, not like, sending a person there once in a while to tick off a few boxes in a PDF. And then on top of it all, they've built a tokenized forward contract that enables the rapid deployment and use of, one of the only really valid use cases with crypto has been just actual smart contracts, right? And then if you look at the sheer amount of cruft that comes along when multiple organizations and the middlemen involved in them kind of just create administrative cruft and cost, both in terms of speed and in terms of money, it's a great opportunity for a company like this to come in and say, well, it's really embedded in this forward contract, right? So a forward contract, too, just to be clear, is just kind of almost like issuing a mortgage for a nature-based solutions project, right? So you found attractive land, you want to preserve it, you want to actually maybe do like a polyculture indigenous forest or something, but you need financing to do it. So you'll sell the first couple of years of carbon to a buyer at a premium. You'll use that money to start the project. That'll enable you to collect the carbon up to the next 20 years, 50 years, however long the project is. And so we thought that was super interesting because at the end of the day, they're going to be making the last mile payments based on the carbon delivered to the actual people involved, not through some co-benefit that ends up being 1% of the total project revenue, right? It'll be a substantial part of the revenue. It's using the tools at play to actually make the asset exchangeable, and then also putting it out there so that it can be quickly purchased and monitored, and not just trust us somewhere in a spreadsheet somewhere, right? Like, so those factors together we really were excited about, and in seeing, that's why we made that investment. And maybe the other one which I'll pick, that's like non-carbon, right? Since we so much carbon happening in the space,
almost 50% of the space we found.
Yeah, absolutely. We really think that blockchain for project finance is going to be very interesting. And so we've, for project finance, like more for the climate transition, for scaling climate finance, right? So stuff like new windmill projects, new renewable energy projects, microfinance for these things, right? Because when you look at renewable energy in particular, there are really big existing project finance funds that are like, $1 billion, super contrary to what people think. Like, it's actually fairly easy to finance these. It's just that they have to be over $100 million, right? But the small business in Guatemala, or in Colombia, or even across Western Africa and Gambia, what have you, that just needs to put 100K of solar on its roof and has more than enough assets to liabilities to do so, can access financing to do that. And so we looked at that problem, and we looked at the problem of renewable energy credits, because the other thing that's interesting about this market is that most of the renewable energy credit demand is in the global north. Most of the renewable energy credit supply is in the global south. And there isn't really a global market that connects those two, so that we can actually have some capital flight in the opposite direction to finance projects in the global south. So that market of both project finance and renewable energy credit markets and digitization we've seen a lot of progress in. So Jasmine Energy is one of the other companies we've invested in that space that's looked at this and said, how do we actually build a functioning market that enables the folks who want to access renewable energy credits in the north to actually finance new renewable energy projects in the south? And so that's a big success area for us. They have signed a giant commit purchase from one of the biggest oil companies in the world, and that could have in your opinion of whether or not we have folks like that participate in the energy transition. It's my opinion that we probably should. Otherwise, when that money needs to go somewhere.
Not going to be.
Exactly. I was like, do you want that money to go into new oil exploration, or do you want it to go into REX? Right. So, and do you want it to go into REX in Guatemala and India, and not, REX in Texas? Right. I know my answer. Right. So, not to pick on Texas too much, but they'll be fine relative to people in India and Pakistan and what have you. So yeah, those are like two really interesting areas that we think we're keeping an eye on. Just using crypto for project finance to accelerate smaller project finance, and using the blockchain accounting systems we've all kind of seen evolve over the last really since Ethereum, right? With smart contracts, and with the first sort of readable, legible, like human readable and machine readable blockchain accounting systems, to really have these applied to markets in renewable energy, so that we can have real renewable energy markets and not a bunch of trade and spreadsheets and PHP interfaces.
Super, thank you, Chad. You never shy away with difficult topics. So two of them are one of the biggest topics in the development sector. Now, first, how does the money reach the last mile? Because we've been talking about that for even before I was born, for ages.
So long.
and money attracts money, right? How do you actually move money from the global north to the global south? So, and especially for these small tickets. So if blockchain is or can be a channel part of the solution, that's quite powerful reason for optimism, aside from the use cases that you just mentioned that sound truly interesting. And just to keep you on the spot, David shared a very interesting question here, I'm sure you're eager to talk about the crypto winter that we've been going through, that, you know, became like the crypto winter and summer, but hopefully, and so does many analysts say, that this will change in the near future, and we're gonna have the crypto market back on its feet very soon. So Gabriela and Jaed, this last question that David has shared, what do you think would happen, or how will it look once this evolves and once this crypto spring, hopefully a more rational one, comes along?
Well, Gabriela, do you want to go first?
Okay, I'm optimistic because I think the main difference between this crypto winter and the previous one was that in 2018, we were not sure if it has only been a beautiful dream that didn't come out, you know, like maybe it's the end of it. But now no one doubts it is going to keep going on. And it's the projects that are waiting for the winter to go over are building. The winter time is to build, we say. So it's a non-stop thing. And I would like to tread back into what Jaed was saying about the energy, just to point out something about this composability. Have you noticed that the number of unbanked farmers is the same number that people with no access to electricity? Why? Because it's the same people. So we are working in a project, in a partnership with I say, when it's official, I would say the name, someone that is financing these smallholder farmers to have solar energy instead of spending.
Awesome.
Where are they getting the money to pay for this? For the money they're using to pay oil and to have all these diseases and all the risks they have. So it's changing something, but the world is connected. So I think this winter had given us the time to tread more tightly all these links, to realize where the solutions can be more efficient. What we are already doing has a wider impact than we thought. And along this time, we have studied and learned about the experiences that we carry along these years, and we are ready to bloom as a true spring. And I think that will happen with lots of the projects that have survived the winter. They will bloom, renew. I wish, I hope.
Thank you.
I think what you said about energy is really interesting, right? Because these are folks who don't have access to electricity, and it's funny because when you look at how a lot of the, speaking broadly, but a lot of the global north, specifically like American infrastructure in Europe post World War II, this was never meant to be some big profit-making enterprise, right? Like these were all public goods projects that were big losers for their government, losers, and like they're awesome. Actually, they're fantastic, right? And so when we look to the developing world and we try to make these gigantic infrastructure investment funds, what have you, to make money out of this, those actually do really well wherever they go. But at the same, my point with this is that we really need to be focusing on this in crypto, because I feel like it's just a problem sitting out there waiting. It's a fantastically profitable, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. It's not the way that we who sit here like in our Barcelona, and I used to grow up in America, it's not how we got our access to power. But if we can find a way to redesign these incentives for public goods within crypto, we definitely should, because I think it would lead to kind of exactly the type of thing we were talking about capital flight, finally some of it going the other way, right? Mm-hmm. where the sun shines, where it makes a lot of sense, right? And also doing it on the terms where the people need it. So
yes. Do you think what's going to change once the crypto winter goes away?
I'm not as much of an optimist as Gabriela. I don't know. I've been through a couple of these too, as she has, but I the difference for me in the last couple of recoveries was that there was always a predominant narrative each time that sort of drove the waves of crypto adoption and use. And this time I'm looking around and, Bitcoin has had a 60% sort of increase in its price in the last 90 days or so, but I don't see any really compelling narratives out there. And I think that I'm more pessimistic in that, like, this is kind of a blip. We're not close to it, because I don't think a lot of what we're seeing is real value in a lot of what we've invested in the market, especially coming out of 2020, 2021. I'm talking about this now in VC, and all of us are looking at some of the things we've done. Luckily, I didn't, I started the fund in 2022, so I was a little bit lucky on that front. But for me, what will it look like when it evolves? One, I hope it does, right? Like, I hope we're in for another spring. And what will it look like? Well, what always happens, and I'm pretty straightforward with this with everyone I speak with, like 98% of crypto projects are made just cruft and nonsense. And this is really good for washing those all out and then building on top of what actually works, what's solving a real problem, what has product market fit, what penetrates the jargon, right, and gets to a real, actual solution. So we'll see more of those, and I hope to see a lot more of them in nature markets, to be honest. That's where I'm looking at as an investor, is how can we actually turn these tools we talked about accounting towards accounting for nature and preserving nature and building the more interesting financialization of nature than just extraction.
Yes, acknowledging our footprint, if we bring it down to the basics. Thank you for that, Jahid, and thank you, Gabriela, as well, because you are a reference in the space for many women, for me in particular, being that there are so many, less than 5% of these initiatives led by women. So very, very proud to have you here and to have you represent the space and represent us and open these doors for us. To know it's possible and having those references there. Also wanted to thank Jesse Fripp, who's here. He's the Secretariat Lead of the CFAR Alliance. As you all know, CFAR, as David mentioned at the beginning, stands for Climate Innovation for Adaptation and Resilience, and it's a global network of different institutions working from different sides of the spectrum, trying to understand and trying to incentivize innovation in the climate space. Jesse, do you want to close us up here? He's talking about collaboration and putting you on the spot just because you have your camera on.
That should teach me. No, thanks, Nelly, and thanks to Jahid and Gabriela for such an incredible conversation, and really exciting to see the potential and of course, the challenges. We know that the challenges are there, but that's why we're here, and encourage everyone to continue to engage on these themes and others, because that's sort of, Nelly, as you pointed out, and as David mentioned in his opening comments, I mean, that's what we're trying to achieve with the Alliance is the drive to action. So stay tuned, stay engaged, and look forward to seeing everyone in the next conversations to come.
Yeah, and Jesse, I just underscore that, if I could just jump in and offer
Absolutely.
And sorry, I wasn't on video earlier. But I think that the work that has been done by the CFAR Alliance and the collective brain power and capacity and knowledge and network of the contributors, many contributors to all of the CFAR working groups, is just really powerful, and appreciate what you all are doing to really accelerate the opportunity space for digital financial tools and solutions to build resilience for those who are most vulnerable to climate change. So thanks a lot. Appreciate the opportunity to follow along and learn and contribute.
Thank you, Jackson. I share the link to the report we were mentioning at the beginning on blockchain for climate innovation, and I want to express my gratitude also to the panelists who are also contributors to the report, and to the other CFAR Alliance members who have contributed with their insights, with their support research and whatnot in this report. So it finally came out. It came out in a moment where there's a lot coming out talking about blockchain and climate. So I think we're in a good momentum trying to spread light on the use cases and the potential of this technology, helping us, as Jared and Gabriela were mentioning, overcome some of the obstacles that have been out there for ages. And that this blockchain seen as a tool, not as an end, but as a means, and connected to other tools and to other technologies, could potentially be a really powerful tool to scale climate action and bring some of that north to the south where the sun shines, you said, Jared. So I want to leave it to you guys if you had anything to close. And to thank everyone who joined us. We'll be sharing the recording. Thank you for the C4 Alliance members for being here and for the support, as Jackson was rightfully mentioning. And of course, to our panelists for collaborating and sharing their time, their insights, and being a living proof of that reason for optimism.
Thank you very much for all of you for being here, to paying attention to this. And I would like to close with a remark inspired on something that Jahed said regarding blockchain is mainly an amazing accounting tool. So let's make our accounting right. Let's include in the capital the social and environmental capital. And that's the only way to do the right accounting. So we have the tool, now we need to have the mindset to include as value what value is. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. Jad, any closing remarks?
I mean, Gabriela's is quite good. Just to reiterate it, just to plus one that I think the power of this stuff for accounting is not just the making sure that the ones and zeros are correct. It's making sure that's achieving that vision of financial inclusion, right? Broadly expanding it to more of a broad-based governance distribution, right? So governance and economic gains. So thank you so much for kind of getting that side of the story out. We very much appreciate all of you, and let's keep building.
Thank you. I share the links to the report. I also wanted to share just a small using the space for advertising, some ecosystem insights from the Crypto for Good Fund from Mercy Corps Ventures, also a C4 Alliance member. And I've shared the link to their latest report, which also sheds lights on all these possibilities for Crypto for Good, an amazing round that they had, and the applications and use cases that we can all learn from. So sharing that on the chat. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day and weekend.
Thanks, everyone.